Hey y'all, it's Candace with Slusher Consulting, and I want to talk to you today about documentation. One of my favorite topics, from what I hear, not everybody's favorite topic. So listen, in home care, no, you're not necessarily nurses. Some of you are, but not everybody is, and you don't have to document like a nurse. However, it's important that what goes on in the agency with your clients, with your staff, with your caregivers, with their families, anything that could affect your agency, the client's care, and your staff needs to be documented in some way, simply for transparency, so that, for instance, if you're the one running an agency and the majority of the conversations are had with you, great. But say you have a backup person or somebody in the office, and if you're not documenting all the conversations that you're having with family members and clients and caregivers about little things that are actually affecting care, what happens if you get sick? I used to say that what happens if I get hit by a bus? Or some people say, what if I hit the lottery and take off, right? The information that's in your head needs to be accessible to anyone else who might be in charge of taking care of these people. And so I know that sounds kind of doomsday-ish, but for transparency purposes, if you're not a team of just one, especially, you really need to document. And even if you are, at some point, somebody else might have to pick up where you leave off. And so they don't know where you leave off. They don't know what's in your head if it's not documented somewhere in a system. So when I'm talking about documenting, again, I personally document conversations with everybody because I want to know what happened yesterday, what happened last week, what happened last month. I should be able to look into my client's record and see all of that. But also incidents, which is anything that's really not on the care plan. If something happens, a fall, even a controlled fall, I'm vacuuming and knocked the table and broke the lamp, that's an incident. A client forgot their medications and I noticed, that's an incident. I found a bruise on her arm, that's an incident. Even if it's not something that happened, the facts would be, what you discovered, what you saw, what you know, or what you were told. So you're not going to want to speculate, oh, I saw a bruise on her arm, she doesn't know what happened, I assume that she fell. You don't do that, but just what you saw, and it needs to be reported. So incidents, occurrences, family drama, little dynamics and things that happen with the client that your caregivers might call you about. It might seem insignificant in the moment, but it might be really important later and you're just not sure. So in my opinion, always best to keep track of those things. Feedback about clients, from caregivers about clients, from clients about caregivers, both positive and negative are important. And maybe it's because you're getting the same feedback about that caregiver with every client you send them to. Or maybe it's you're getting the same feedback about that client from every caregiver that goes out there, right? You need to be able to identify those patterns and make sure that you're doing the best both for your clients and your employees. So negative and positive feedback, right? Like, hey, this client called and said they really love this caregiver and they want her to come back as often as possible, even though she was a fill-in. Great, put that in her file, send her a little note card, but document that they commented positively. That's important too. A lot of times our best caregivers never hear from us, right? If they're low maintenance, they're not the squeaky wheel, so they don't get the grease. And that's pretty important that they do hear back from us, especially when something goes well. Complaints. Sometimes negative feedback is a true complaint. So you need to determine for yourself what that means and what that looks like. But complaints do need to be documented and addressed. Client satisfaction. Everybody does client satisfaction a little differently, whether it's a sampling monthly or quarterly, or you send out a survey once a year, whether it's on paper or electronic link or both, whatever, that does need to be documented. When a client goes to a hospital and then subsequently when they're discharged, those things need to be documented in the system because oftentimes there's going to be some sort of change in condition or there was an occurrence, something usually happened that needs to be documented that caused that hospitalization. Or maybe they're just going in for a scheduled surgery, but still their care plan might be different when they come out, right? So everybody needs to be aware of those things. On top of the fact that when somebody goes to the hospital, that's a good opportunity to get in there and visit the case managers, go see your client, and go see those case managers. Good marketing. But when there's discharges, you're going to want to update that care plan, and that's important. Any sort of infection, not just COVID, upper respiratory infection, urinary tract infection, or even a skin infection from when they bumped their arm a couple of weeks ago, those things need to be looked at. Any sort of change in condition, but also a change in behaviors, right? Those are going to oftentimes a change in behavior might be that there's something acute going on and needs to be addressed by a doctor. But a change in condition might mean we need to update the care plan, because a few weeks ago when I first started with her, she could walk just fine with her walker. Now I have to hold on to her, or her walker, she's about to fall. That's a change in condition you need to be aware of. Now, a change in schedule, whether it's a cancellation or an addition of an extra shift, or the schedule changes altogether. It was mornings, now it's afternoons. It was days, now it's nights, or we've added. Those things need to be documented in the system. You can't just change the schedule and assume that somebody's going to know when and why, right? What if the person who's paying is forgetful or doesn't understand what's going on, and you send them a bill for twice as much and maybe they're not in the home? Like, anything could happen, right? There's just a lot of little details that could fall through the cracks and cause you stress, undue stress that you don't need. So you want to educate your staff on what to report to you, what kind of information they're sending to you. And that's at every turn. At the beginning, when you first orient them, when you introduce them to their client, when you do regular check-ins with the caregivers in regard to what's going on with their client, or when you're doing your supervisory visits, their annual evaluations, all of that, you're always giving the message that I want you to report things to me. I'm trusting you to go out into this client's home, and they're trusting us with your care. So I don't know what's happening in the house if you don't tell me. And that's really important. So we're all on the same team. So in general, if an incident happens or a report, you would ask maybe your staff to send in a report, fill out an incident report and send it in. Great. But what happens if they don't? What happens if they mail it and you don't get it for 10 days by snail mail? So yes, it's a good idea to ask them to send in a report because you always want their statement. But if it was me, I would go ahead and initiate that report myself in the office, so that you've got something documented, and when theirs comes in, you staple it to it. You've got both, or if theirs is sufficient, that's fine. But when it comes down to documentation of things like incidents, the state holds you accountable for that documentation. So saying, well, I told my caregiver to send it in, she never did, is not going to fly. That's not going to be good enough, right? I think that's mostly it. I just want you to know how important it is to keep up with your documentation on probably a daily basis. Even weekly might, when you get busy, hopefully when you have 50 or 100 clients or more, being able to catch up with that later is just not feasible. So you need to try to have some sort of system, holding yourself accountable to document what you know is going on so that you can share that with others. And of course, you're also going to want to document any kind of emergencies. And all of this information is helpful when you're doing your QAPI. So I hope this is helpful. Sorry about the lecture, but I think it's important stuff. If you have any questions, reach out.